so the documentation should be built here, and we're looking at everything from expressions to top level components, and yeah, things are looking rather good. So we were supposed to do more inlining for the diagrams, maybe do an optional sequence for imports. Imports, that would be simple statements, right? Yeah, and here it would be nice to do the optional sequence, since this doesn't have the separator in there. But maybe that's not that important right now. Adding tests, that would always be nice. Compare op bitwise or pair should not be too top level. What was that one about? Oh, this one. Compare op bitwise pair is put in here, so this to do is actually already done. And I guess I should have asked first, do you have any question or comment to start with?
Oh, no.
All right.
No, I'm good. I'm going to be switching device. I'll switch devices in a moment.
All right. Okay, so I guess the two things we could do next is optional sequence for imports. It's probably not that much of a priority. Or try somehow to implement line wrapping, which is a to-do from quite a long time ago. Another thing we could do is clean up the code a little, because we do have some functions with a lot of arguments. So what would be interesting for you?
Well, the advantage of cleaning up the code is it gives me a chance to learn it better, I suppose.
Alrighty.
On the other hand, the idea of line breaks sounds fascinating.
It's fascinating, but I have no idea how to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe we'll clean up the code.
Yeah, I guess everything else will be, or should be, simpler once the code is cleaned up. So the problem here is we got into the situation where there's a lot of arguments to a single function, and I guess we need some kind of class or objects that will hold at least some of those. Actually, one thing we could do for a recursive function like this is to make an inner function that well, it basically only takes the ones that don't change. So railroad is the same everywhere. Node is always different, and the rules to inline, that's context, that's always the same. So all of these calls can just be replaced by a call to this one recursive function. And then this railroad call to that function can be removed. And all of these other arguments can be removed as well. Not that one. And then function, and that should do it for this one function. Unless, oh, rules to inline. Okay, there's here's replacing the variable source to inline, so this one should be just a different variable name. And oh, this recurse is a bit different. So this one should have new rules to inline. That should then be an optional argument. Hopefully that's it. And this always returns, so the return value should go here. And I messed up something here. Okay, maybe then rules to inline need to be an argument to this function, like a proper argument as well. So that would do it for this one function. But I think there should be some kind of, I don't know, a global context or something like that to take care of these, like the whole set of the rules. Maybe these rules to inline, the top level groups, top level role names, things like that. Those tend to be kind of passed around to every place that needs them, and maybe this needs some better organization. Are you following this a bit?
Yeah, this is great actually, because it's I like the way you're describing like the criteria for, you know, making one decision versus another, especially for someone who might be sort of new to this, because this is a reusable skill. You know, you walk into a situation and you see, okay, like you said, these are all the things that change, and these are all the things that are the same. So, you know, start grouping things by the commonalities.
Yeah, and I think we have a pattern where we pass around these top level groups and top level rule names kind of as lists and dicts, and maybe we should have like an object oriented grouping to them so we can use attribute names and such. So at the top level, what we have is these like these chunks of grammar, right? So these are called the top level groups, I guess. Maybe we need a better name for them. And those basically have a list of rules that should be defined in them. So first of all, they have the so-called top level rules, which are the ones specified in the documentation. Right. So, well, let's find a good example. Can't find one. Oh, here's one. So here the tool is asked to document with the with statement, and to do that it also needs to document the with item. Right, so to do this, the with item can only appear in like the top level rules that we're asked to document, or other rules documented here, and that way we know where to put this rule definition in the documentation. And there's also a list of diagrams, since, for example, here we only have one diagram, even though we're documenting two rules. Right, so each of these chunks will have three lists of rules, or maybe just rule names. The ones we're asked to document, the ones we're actually documenting, and the ones we're documenting in text, and the ones we need diagrams for. Does that make sense?
Yes, this is good.
All right. So, where to put this? This is kind of top level structure, so I would probably add it before all the nodes. So currently we have the argument parser, the main function, and then the grammar nodes. And I would probably put the top level structure, like data structures, just after the main function. So we'll have rule group. I don't know how to call this. So what will this need? We'll definitely want the rule set, and the rule set is currently like this rules. That's currently just a dictionary of names to rule objects. I guess that's fine. I'll definitely want it in the group, so that the rule, the group can compute whatever it needs. Right. So what rules to include, what rules to have as diagrams. Right. So after this this main dictionary of all the rules, we'll also want the rule names that we're asked to document here. And I wonder if there's a better name for these than top level rule names. What would you call these rule names that we're asked to document?
Let's see. Target.
Target. Input, maybe.
Target. Input. Yeah. Source. Inputs. Let's see, because they exist in contrast to something, right? They're going to be different from the.
They're going to be different
We
from
wanted to.
the ones that are added implicitly.
Yeah. Explicit. Let's see.
But I guess they are just used for input and they're not really used
Yeah.
anywhere else. Or maybe since we're using these as, you know, the starting set and then we're looking for which other ones to include, we could use seed, like for seeding the graph walking algorithm.
Oh, that's good.
Initial. Yeah. So let's say the rule group gets an initial list of names, and then expands itself to include all the other ones it needs. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Right. So how? Oh, and I guess for the algorithm to work, it will also need to know all the top level rule names. And maybe that's already enough to encapsulate this. Like we'll have the whole rule set, the global object, initialize that with the rules dictionary and the top level rule names. So this is all the rule names that the documentation asks for explicitly. Right. I call this rule set or something else. Let's see. So here we have rules. We can create a rule set from these rules, and basically we're treating this as a list or a sequence of the top level rule names. Right. And we can convert that to a sequence. And then I guess we shouldn't. So it should be a set. That's set is nice. And it should be a set that's not changed anymore. So frozen set. Right. And now all the functions that take rules and top level rules will take this rule set argument. That makes sense?
Yes, it does. I'm going to restart my Discord client. Having some problems with the video.
Oh dear. Okay, see you in a bit.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
So what I'll do is I'll send rule set to this get rule names to inline function, which will then take rule set top level rule names is then taken from the rule set instead of as an argument, and the rules are also taken from the rule set. Looks good. Welcome back. Can you see me?
Let's see. Oh, almost. I can hear you perfectly.
All right, let's
Just,
restart this.
Let's try and get this now.
Is this better?
Okay. Watch stream. Yeah, no, it's totally my end. But hopefully it'll get. Wish I could downgrade the resolution. That might help. But there doesn't seem to be a way to do that. Oh wait, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think I can do that on my end.
No, it's not yours. You're fine. I happen to be in a building that has notoriously poor Wi-Fi.
So maybe let's try a different service.
Yeah, I suppose we could do that. That's true.
So I'll send a link to the Discord chat once I find it here. There we go. I've set this to 5 frames per second. Maybe it'll work better.
Oh my god. Much better.
Is it?
That's so much better. Thank you. This is magnificent.
You have your camera on. You might want to turn it off to save even more bandwidth. Alrighty.
That's great. That's a good idea.
Okay, so here's what I have done. There's creating a rule set, and now this function that took both the rules and the top level rules now can take this rule set object, and then the function itself basically gets rid of the 2 arguments, replaces them by the rule set, and then instead of top level rule names it goes rule set dot to top level rule names. And instead of rules, it goes rule set dot rules. That's basically the pattern.
Okay.
I'll want to follow for some initial refactoring. So right now it has rule set, and it also has the top level rule groups, and ultimately that will also go into the rule set itself, I guess. Right. Now I don't think we should be using rules itself in the rest of this function, since every time we use it, we also have this set of top level rules right next to it, right? So that's another reason why it makes sense to merge these together. Right, so for generate rule lines, instead of rules and top level rules, we'll also want the rule set. And this thing takes future top level rules, and I don't think this is used anywhere else, and it's also currently an empty set. So what I'll do here is I'll remove this argument and handle the future top level rules inside the function. Okay, so here instead of rules we'll have rule set. Top level rule names, that goes away, and wherever we use the top level rule names, I guess this can now become a local variable, and I'll re-add what I had in that the call site there. Right. So instead of rules, we excuse me.
Yes, nothing. It's things are falling into place. This is cool. Yeah.
So instead of rules, I will now use rules.rules. This pattern is coming up quite often, so maybe a rule set should have like a get function, or maybe we could do just that. Let's get to that later. And this should be it for generate rule names. Rules set, not rules set. Okay, things are working as before, and that's great. Now again, this get rules to document function takes rule set.rules and a top level rule names, and let's see where. Oh, it's called in get rule names to inline as well. It's called in generate diagrams as well, and that's it. And I think in all the invocation, these top level rule names should include the future top level rules. So what I'll do here is I'll do the same transformation for this function, right? So it'll take a rule set instead of the 2 arguments, and I'll add this union with the top level rule names up here instead. So this will now take a rule set and not that, and instead of the rules variable, it'll use rule set.rules. Right, now this is called a couple times, so here, it just takes the rule set. More calls, here's one. So yeah, generate diagrams, I guess that's another function that will take the rule set instead of these 2 arguments. So let's do that right now. So rule set dot rules instead of just rules. Instead of top level rule names, we'll have rule set dot top level rule names. So we'll get rid of that argument. Oh, and this is the get rules to document function, so that takes just a rule set now. Right. And now we need to change the call side for this generate diagrams. So instead of this and that, it'll take the rule set. Hopefully that works as before. The proper refactoring, yep.
Nice.
And now the rules variable isn't really used in the rest of the function. It's just used in this debug output. So rather than polluting the namespace here since it's a pretty long function, so I'll not have this as a variable, and I'll just pass it in like this. And now I can be a little more sure that whenever I want the full list of rules that exist, I'll get it from the rule set. All right. Good. Now there's a convert grammar call that takes these top level rules. Dictionary, maybe this whole thing could go in a separate function, but that's for later. So what now? Now we have the rule names to inline. And how do we get the rule names to inline? We call this function we give it top level rule groups. So what does this function do? Get rule names to inline.
The input rules.
No, it goes through each of the top level groups.
Right, I see. Yeah, it collects let's see, candidates. Duplicates. Not duplicates, redundants.
Redundants. Yeah.
That's a silly word. Get rule names to inline.
So it gets the rules to document.
Okay.
That's the first part. So it goes through all the groups. So I'm thinking functions like this that go through all the groups, or take a group, should ideally be methods on the group object. Right?
Oh.
So we create a group object. We give it the rule set thing.
Yes.
And then we ask it, maybe even in the initializer, to do its thing, to compute the various lists of what should be documented in here and what should be inlined and whatnot. Because I think currently we are duplicating some calls to these functions. I knew I was going to do the refactoring before, so I didn't really.
Should we add a doc string to that class?
Yeah, definitely. So I usually add doc strings later when it's more clear that I'll actually keep the class. But
sure.
Let's do it so it's just not set. So this is the all rules.
The set of all rules. Okay.
What? Let's just call it the grammar.
Oh, of course. Okay.
Right, so this object represents the complete complete grammar.
Okay.
Right, because the set of rules is the grammar, right?
Yes.
Right. So this is basically a model of the grammar for documentation purposes.
Right.
Well, it's docs generator, so. Alright, so now I need to change the class name, and I should also change all the variables with this, right? So instead of rule set, we'll have grammar. Yeah, so there's another variable called grammar, but this is the pgen grammar, right? And you know, if it's a class that only has one instance, then that instance should live in a variable called grammar. And if that would be confusing, grammar is probably a bad name for the class. Okay, now there's rule set, which is a dictionary, so that's a different rule set. This is actually the grammar. This is actually the grammar. This one is as well. Simplified rule set, that'll probably be a function on the grammar later. And now here we have grammar. There we go. Right, works as before, and that's great. And yeah, just like with the rules, we have this pgen grammar, so that's what comes from Python, Python's parser. We converted that into our own grammar. So I'm not calling this like docs generator grammar to distinguish it, the same as you know, this node. I'm not calling that, you know, the docs generator node. But I'll qualify any other kind of node, like where do we have that here? Convert grammar node. Yeah, so that's a bad name now. This should be a pgen node instead of grammar node.
Cool.
Right. So replace all that. Here too. And that's it. Here are some pgen rules. So that's good. And there's another kind of node, which is the like diagram element, like the railroad dot sequence. So this is also very similar to our nodes. Also have sequences and choices and so on, but a different kind. so diagram and pgen should probably always live as these prefixes. All right. Okay. Now, what we are collecting here is the top level rules and the top level rule groups. So the top level rule groups is a list of tuples, right? And that basically well, if you have more than one rule in these inputs, so this triple would then be part of that list, right? So if we're saying all of this should go in here basically. So now we're modeling that as the triples of names, and this is what I would like to model as this rule group, right?
Right. Okay.
And I guess the grammar should build, or at least partially build, these rule groups from some kind of input. So maybe the grammar could take these top level rule groups and yeah. So instead of top level rules, which we're treating as a sequence, we'll take these top level rule groups. Right? And the top level rule names then will be the union of all of these tuples. Oh. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm following.
Right. Now we shouldn't name this top level rule groups because it's not actually instances of this rule group. So what would be
Pagan? Should we call them pagan groups? No.
These are names, right? So these are
right.
these are rule names, right? So
I see. Okay.
group rule names. Okay.
Yep.
And we'll name this names, so it's obvious these are strings. Now we have 4 ruled in names, which always sounds funny. Usually when I'm iterating over some collection like this, I want the singular here and the plural here. And if that name is in top level rules, and now this top level rule should really be top level rule names as well, so it's clear that it's strings.
Okay.
Oh, so it's a dict, so not names but top level rule locations. Because the only reason we have this thing
Yes.
is to report duplicates, right? So if we already saw the name, we should say it appears both in the previous location and in the new one.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a debug info here. And oh, this is not rule, that's name. Instead of top level rule groups, we now have group rule names. I guess I should name that here as well. All right. Okay, so now the whole thing this does is get the group rule names. That's the main thing. It also gets the files with grammar. Yeah, we need the files with grammar as well. So that's great. So what is this convert grammar? So okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm looking at this whole piece of code, and I would like to convert that to a function, right? So what this does is it sets these three variables that I can then reuse in the rest of this giant function, and I don't like that. I would like to pull this thing out, give it a name, and give it like a restricted set of outputs, right? So whatever I don't need, or whatever I can encapsulate somehow, or generate it from the other information here, I don't need to include as the result of that function. Does that make sense?
I see. Because okay, so this is the list of inputs.
Yeah, basically. So what this does, well, there's a docstring for the function here as well. So get all the tuple rule names, right, and the files we're updating, blah 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 blah.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, that looks like a function. So let's make it a function. This will be its docstring. Internal docstring, so it doesn't need the proper docstring format yet. And then the result of that function is currently these three variables, and we'll see if we can eliminate some of that. Right? And then to call that, we do that. And the name is, well, I guess parse docs. And the argument to that function would be the docs directory. Right, so it doesn't need all the arguments to the entire program. It only needs the docs directory for that. Right, so I'm trying to limit the amount of information this piece of code gets, so it doesn't depend on the entire universe. And
this is called from the production. Is this called from the production list directive? No. This is called from
this is called directly from main.
a main. Okay.
So it goes through all the RST files in the target directory,
Yeah,
and
I see.
it looks for these grammar snippet headers.
Grammar
and parses
snippets.
them.
Okay.
Okay, so now this function has 3 outputs. Files with grammar will definitely need that because we then need to update the files. We basically need to go through that list again. Maybe that could we could have a function to generate that list beforehand. No, we can't because only the RST files that include our directives get included. And so files with grammar is not called for all the files. There's an if here. So we definitely need this function to fill this set. Then we have top level rule locations, which should only be useful in this function itself. We should be able to get rid of that. And then group rule names, that's the actual main output of the function, right?
Yeah.
So to get rid of top level rule locations, we need to get rid of it in this convert grammar. So what does convert grammar do with it? It uses it for simplification. Ah, I see. So I guess one thing we could do here is make put parsing the grammar inside the grammar object itself, right? So I would want to do something like grammar equals grammar dot from grammar dot parse the grammar file name. Okay, and it'll also need the group rule names here. And I will want this from, since it's a class method that creates this object. And that should be everything I need there. So let's see. So this is not so. This is class method, and it takes the file name and group rule names. Okay, so builds a parser, gets the rules, creates an instance of this class. So this is an interesting pattern, right? And this also needs the top level rule locations, right? But the top level rule locations are just a set of all the strings that appear in this list of list of tuples. So this could be moved here. And now everything should work as before, except we're doing this piece of work 2 times. And I guess we can just add this to the init. Does that make sense? I don't know if you're following this.
Yeah, I had to step away for a moment to make some breakfast, but I'm back.
Ah.
Yes, this is good.
Right, so we have a class method to create an instance. So yeah, usually what I like to do is to make the init function of a class take like the data it needs, and if it needs to be generated from some file, I make it a class method that gets the data and passes it to the init. In this case, I guess it's not that important to do that. Maybe the init should directly take the grammar file name, but this seems like a cleaner split, especially if we'll process this data further. Does that make sense?
Oh, cool. I haven't used it. Yes, I haven't used the class method decorator before, so that's cool. I mean, thank you.
Yeah, it's usually used. It's usually used to create new instances of the class. Right. So what this does is instead of self, it gets the class object itself. So you can then call it.
Okay.
And you can call it on the class itself. Right? So this is grammar without making instance and
okay.
from Pigeon file. So now we have this debug output, and that should probably go into this from region file as well. So what does that do? Goes through all the rules. So oh, it needs the debug argument. So this is like a top level global setting. So since we have this global object, the debug should probably go in here. Now I hope to simplify this a bit more later. But now this args.debug goes in here. Yeah, and I also need to set this. Maybe this should be a data class. Right, but this works now. And now I think this convert grammar is doing a bit too much work. So I'll we'll look at what it does. So it goes through all these rules. It converts the nodes to our kinds of nodes, builds this rule set, and then it simplifies the rule set, right? And it is called from just one place. So I think this could actually be inlined into here, right? Because from pgen file, whatever this function or this method is doing is actually converting the pgen grammar, right? So instead of calling that, I'll take this code and splice it into here. So pgen rules, that's the same thing. Top level rule names, that's the same thing. So we're creating some kind of rule set, adding stuff to this rule set, and then now here we're returning the rule set, and that is then the result of this call. So it's passed into these rules, right? So here I will go and use rule set, right? Probably just call it rules instead of rule set because it's, you know, the addictive rules. Return it. Right, does that make sense?
Cool, this is very cool. Yeah.
But now I see what we're doing here. We're building addictive rules, then we're simplifying it, then we're creating a then we're creating a grammar object with this list of rules, right? What we could do instead is move the simplification until after the creation of the class, like here, right? But now instead of rules, we have self.rules. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so far so good.
Oops. Ooh, what happened there? Right. And this is simplification of the rules. So let's move that into its own method. No, I didn't call simplify. Right. One here, top level rule names. Has to be self.top level rule names. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
these top level rule names, which are a bit awkward to generate in here, are no longer used in this function, so I can actually generate them in init. Right? So init gets the group rule names and the top level rule names, and one can actually be generated from the other, but so this is a bit awkward. But now, since simplification is its own function, I can put this in here and get rid of this as an argument.
Now the self, when you use self in the class method, is it referring to the class method or to the whole class?
So this is now just a variable. So self is an instance of the grammar class that is created in the middle of this class method.
Okay.
This is probably not a convention that everybody uses, but that's what I use when these like factory methods.
Okay.
Alright, so init is now init now gets just the data it needs. There's no duplication in here. It's this is the dict of rules. This is the group rule names, grouped by the documentation chunks, and there's debug flag, which is a bit nasty. Maybe it could be like a global variable or something, but well, it is what it is. You put this on this global object. Right? We have simplification in this class. Perfect. This is looking good, I think. Right, let's look up here. Now, since we have this from pgen file, and the top level rule locations now got shuffled all the way to here, we don't actually need this variable anywhere else in the main function anymore, and we can not return it from that function. Right? So now the parse docs function doesn't return any duplicate information. Only returns the set of files with the grammar and list of the names grouped into the chunks we should generate. Right? Okay, good.
Very cool.
So we parse the docs, parse the grammar, right, parse the grammar, so this comment could as well read create the grammar, which is obvious from the call itself, so it's an unneeded comment. Hooray for deleting unneeded comments. And now we have the rule names to inline, which is another argument that always gets passed with the grammar object. So this call should go into the grammar object as well. But what I'll do here is put things in Git, because there's a lot of changes already.
A lot of changes. Yeah, a lot of things.
Okay. So rule names to inline equals get rules names to inline. That can be in here. Self dot rule names to inline is that. This grammar here is called self. Group rule names, we have that as an argument. So we can remove the argument from everywhere it's being passed to. So generate rule names, will not get rule names to inline. It will ask the grammar for that. Right, here it's converting to a set, and I think the grammar can do that for us. And the other place that this needed is generate diagrams. And that can also ask the grammar for the information. Ah. But that changed the behavior somehow.
Did it?
Oh, it did, yes. Interesting. So let's do that a bit more carefully. I'll undo. So what's going on here? We get the rule names to inline. What does that actually do? It goes through the given top level groups. Yeah, and for each group it's it gets rules to document in that group, and then it basically finds all the ones that only get referenced once, and those are the ones to inline. Okay. And it's used from the main function for generate rule lines, and it's also used in the generate diagrams. And somehow it's different in each case. Interesting. But so now that I've looked at what's inside the actual function, I see that it's operating on individual groups.
Okay.
Right. So I think it's now time to flesh out this rule group class a bit more, because that functionality could probably live inside that class as a method on there.
Oh, of course. Okay.
Right. So let's do that. So here we're kind of doing matches for this header lines, and that we're calling generate rule lines with the name of the first rule in the group. So for example, if we're generating this, we would call it with match statement, and I get the generate rule lines. Oh no, this is match, not split. So this is called with all of these, but we kind of already have that that information in these group role names, right? So this match.split will produce one of the tuples in this group role names list. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So, what I would like to do, I would probably go in here, and when we're going through the group role names, I'd create the role group here, right? So what should the role groups be? I guess that needs to be a dictionary because we'll look up the individual role groups. This is not the group, this is the strings.
Okay.
We'll create the actual role group object in here. So that needs, you know, the grammar and the role names. So that will be self and the names here.
Okay.
And then I need to add it into this dictionary under some key, and I guess the best key for that would be the first name. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But that's a list, right? Names is.
Yes, name. This initial role names is a list.
Yeah.
Yes, we're just storing that in here for now.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So now, what do we do with these groups?
Do you mean as a collection, or each individual group, like when we get one?
No. I mean, where do we use this dictionary of these objects? Right. I guess that would need to be used somewhere inside this generate rule lines. And the generate rule lines conceptually should be a method on the group, right? Because what we're doing here is looking for like these group definitions. So instead of calling this function, getting it and giving it like this information, in here we should get the group. So that would be match 1, split 1, and the first item. So that's the name, and this would be grammar.groups under that key, right? That'll always be found, hopefully. No. Role groups. Okay. Let's just call it groups. There's like, it's the one kind of group that we'll have in this entire tool.
Okay.
Must be stir or none. Oh right, splits on white space, and I need to use max split. You know max split?
Oh. No.
So when I have a string like this with a bunch of stuff separated, in this case with white space, split normally would give me a list of 3 things. But if I just want to get the first thing out of here.
Oh, I see.
Right?
Okay.
So I tell split to only split once and keep the rest.
Right.
Right. Another way to do this would be partition. So this gives the start, the separator, and the rest. Right. So this is the method you usually use for splitting in one place. Right. So you're not getting a list with an arbitrary number of elements, but you're split at the first occurrence of this separator.
Right. Okay, the separator. Okay.
And if the separator doesn't appear, then you get nothing in the sep and rest. Everything's in the start. That's quite a useful function, but I don't think it can split on generic white space. That's the problem there. Let's see. Yeah, so partition needs to have an explicit separator, and I do want to split on one white space like split does. Right, so if somebody puts like 2 spaces and a tab in here,
oh, I see.
I want to split on that, so I need to use the split instead of partition, which is a shame, but...
Oh, okay. So partition is more explicit.
Yeah, I always like to use partition if I'm splitting in one place. It's quite useful there. And I guess the nice thing is that it always gives you 3 return values, so you can unpack it like this and give these things nice names. Split can give you a list. In this case, the list can have 1 or 2 elements.
Right.
And then I'm just taking the first one here, and it's a bit... Yeah, this is a bit unreadable, so let's give it a name. Okay. And now generate rule lines can take the group. Hopefully. So it would get the grammar as group.grammar, and it would get the rule names as the group's whatever that attribute is called, initial rule names. Right? Use rule names anywhere else? No, so just plop that in here. Grammar, yeah, we use that somewhere else, so let's keep that. Right. And now it also takes to debug, which we can now get from the grammar as well. And it's not really a property of the grammar, but we're just sticking it on there because it's a global object. Not really clean, but useful, I guess. Maybe that could just be a global variable. Alrighty. So I think that's a simplification here. Now, can we do the same thing with generate diagrams? So what generate diagrams also goes through all the groups, but there's some common setup before that.
Right.
Right. so this needs to be a top level function or maybe a method on the grammar if we want to go object oriented. But anything in here could like go through grammar.groups instead of top level groups. So this group is now a tuple of names. We don't really want that. But it's only used here, so let's do group dot initial names, and top level groups here would be grammar dot groups. And that's a dict, so this would be values. Well, looks like that works. So we don't need this top level groups argument anymore because it is included in the grammar. What was it? Group rule names? There we go. Right, so that's I think that's already useful. So that's fleshing out, I guess, the rule group class. Right. Now these rule names to inline are bothering me a bit. Could we simplify that? So I see here we're calling get rules to document. On grammar and some names. Maybe the get rules to document should take an actual group object as well. So where is it called from? It's called from generate rule lines, from get rule names to inline, and generate diagrams. And the only place that doesn't have a group object is this get rule names to inline, which takes the grammar and does for group and top level groups. So that needs the same treatment as here. Can lose the top level groups argument, and now this group is a tuple of strings. And now get rule names to inline will not take this. I'll get that from the grammar. Right, and that works as before. And now we have a function that takes a single argument of a class that we defined. So this should probably be a method, and this should be named self. That makes sense?
Yep.
And of course, whenever we call it, we need to call it like grammar.getRules names to inline. I only call it in one place. Right. And now I I see inside this method we have this loop. Oh, one more simplification before that. Get rules to document is now always called with group.initial rule names. Like here's a call site, here's a call site, here's the other call site. So it can get that list from the group. Right, so we'll give it the group. Before rule names. Can get that from the group itself. Snippet. Oh, that's probably a better name for the group, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, yeah,
yes.
Definitely. Okay, let's rename everything after this. No, get rules to document now takes the group. Everything's working. Let's put that inside the commit before. Okay, and now let's rename group to snippet. Oh, so this, yeah, that's called grammar snippet.
Beautiful.
Okay, and now there's a search and replace for the term group, case insensitive. So, right, so this is snippet.
It's funny how anyone looking at the final product is going to
replace that, replace that, replace that, replace that.
Yeah.
Keep this one.
Yes.
It's funny how there's... Oh, keep this one, definitely. It's unrelated. Okay, so we have group, which is part of the Sphinx terminology, and group, which is this description of what the snippet is. And now... Oh, I have had case sensitivity turned on. There's group, there's pgen.grammar group, that's unrelated. Railroad.group, that's unrelated. Rule group is now snippet.
Oh, okay.
And that should be all.
Super
Yeah.
cool. Commit.
Yeah, definitely. Ah, yeah, that's a much better terminology. Alright, so now where were we? We were getting the rule names to inline, right? And get rules names to inline goes through all the snippets and does something with them. The main thing it does, I guess, is get rules to document, right? Now the get rules to document function now gets two arguments, the grammar and the snippet, but the snippet actually has a reference to its grammar, which you could say it's not not perfect to have a link from the grammar through self.snippets and then have the link back. I mean, that there's some duplication in the data model, but it's definitely much easier to have this link back when you're working with stuff, right? So the reason it's much easier is because functions like this now can just get the snippet, right? And the grammar, they can take right. Each snippet needs to correspond to a grammar. You cannot really have a snippet by itself because it depends on like the top level rule names and stuff like that. Oh, there's right. Okay, it builds now. And now we have a function with one argument of a class we've defined, which means this should ideally be a method, right? So instead of snippet, we'll use self. Include in this grammar snippet. Includes all the walls will document initial rule names, also rules reference from them recursively, except the ones that will be documented elsewhere. Those are in grammar top level rule names. I need to go through all the doc strings and comments again because that doesn't show up in the tests. And now, of course, get rules to document needs to be called using the method syntax. Yeah, one more place there. All right. Now, so what is this doing actually? Get rules to document. It recursively finds the rules to document. But this is probably information that shouldn't really change over time, right? This might just be a property on the snippet. Right? So that whenever we need this information, we don't need to do this while loop here.
Right.
Hopefully it doesn't change. Let's see. So snippet.rules to document. Wait, what? Oh, yeah, we cannot do that yet because of the creation order here. We're creating snippets in this for loop, and only after that we're setting top level rule names. Which gets rule names to document needs to compute itself. But top level rule names really depends on like it needs to be built from the same set of data as the snippets themselves, right? So I mean, either this could be a cached property computed on demand, or or maybe the best way to do this is to do 2 for loops in here. Like first we compute the top level rule names, we've set the debug in here as well, and after that we populate the snippets. Uh-huh. Huh. Apparently something is wrong. So rule names to inline. We're asking the rule names to inline, and the grammar don't have self.roles with name. That's weird. And statements, it really should have statements at this point. Grammar is already created. What? What did I change? Git knows.
Yeah. Oh, is it the second for loop?
Yeah, well. So what this is doing is it's creating the top level rules name set and setting the attribute early. And that shouldn't really affect anything. And this is just working with sets and tuples and lists.
Okay.
And then it does the same thing with, well, goes through the rules again and creates snippets, which is a big operation right now. But it's the last thing done in this init, so everything should be working. Huh. Okay, that's the end of the diff, right? Oh, then this was changed. Okay, let me back out. Okay, now things are working. And the problem was when I did self dot rules to document equals self dot get rules to document. Right, so that's an error because get rules to document needs something that's not set up just yet.
Oh, okay.
Right, so then what I wanted to do is split this this for loop. So let's do that step by step. First of all, self.debug can go first, just so that I have as much set up as possible before getting to the dynamic stuff. Now snippets is getting set up in this for loop, so that should still work. And now this for loop now sets both snippets and the top level rule names. So I'll split that in two pieces. First I'll set the top level rule names. So remove everything snippet related. Set the attribute there. Then I'll set snippets, so remove everything top level rule related. And things do still work. Right? And now if I call this, everything still works. So that might have been a stupid mistake somewhere. No. So now instead of get rules to document, we should use just rules to document statically. So where are the call sites? One is here, and get rules names to inline. And when I do that, now things break. All right. Things break here. What rules is not set up yet? Where is get rule names to inline called? It's called from main after everything's set up. That's weird. Well, then I guess this really needs to be dynamic. Oh, there's a pop here. Rule names to consider. Oh, that makes a copy. There's a pop. Sure, the reason is quite simple.
So the pop is just to look at the first item on
Yeah,
okay.
This is basically this is going through so this is pretty much the same thing as for rule name and rule names to consider, except we're adding to the list, right? So we
okay.
just need to
Right.
pop here, and we need to keep the order, because if the order is given here, and if this would be reordered, it would be weird. So we're not using sets. But I don't know why this wouldn't be set all of a sudden. Self.rules should be a dictionary. There's simplify that changes self.rules. Oh, I get it now. Right, so I get it now. So simplify simplifies the whole grammar, which means it will remove some of the rules which are no longer needed.
Okay. So should we call it remove unneeded rules?
No, it also simplifies the ones that are left.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
So it simplifies everything. Which means if we get the rules to document early,
Oh, I see. The extra ones.
yeah, we get we get the unsimplified ones. Yeah, that's the problem. All right, so I guess this does need to be dynamic. Or maybe we need to simplify before creating the snippets. Like move the simplification here. Right.
Oh, that's nice.
And then do whatever I removed. And then just get the rules document. Okay, that's working as before. That's great. Where else do we call this get rules to document? In generate rule lines. So hopefully this will not change the result. Won't. Great. And there was one more call to this, which I'm worried about, and that's in the diagrams. Oh no, everything's great. Okay. So now instead of calling this, like doing this loop 3 times, we just do it once for each snippet. That's perfect. Now nobody should be calling this. Everybody should be using this static attribute. So let's put an underscore in here.
Oh, okay. Nice. Okay.
Okay. And now this sort of makes sense in a function, but if we're, we have a snippet class, maybe this could be documented rules. And it's documented rule names.
And are we calling them rule names or not snippet names?
Rule names. So snippet is a collection of rules. So what was the old name of that?
You can call it a group. Oh, never mind.
Rules to document. Instead of that, we have now documented rule names. So documented rule names is now a list of strings, and let's see how we use it. So we iterate over it and get the node. Get the rule corresponding to each name. Okay. Next usage, we iterate over it and just use the names. We iterate over it and use the names. Then we iterate over it and use both the names of and the rule. So I think instead of a list of names, it should be a dictionary. Right? we have the key,
Oh, right. We have the keys. Okay, got it.
but we're pretty much always getting the rule that corresponds to the key, right? So
Yeah,
let's go through the usages of documented
cool.
rules.
I see. That's sweet. Taking a list and sort of converting it into.
Oh, it was named documented rule names. Right, and this, like this this attribute name is a bit jarring itself, right? Because we have a list of names, a list of strings, even though we're modeling things with proper objects now, right?
Oh, I see. Okay. Now, is that a dictionary comprehension in that? Where
oh
you
yes.
Defined,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a dict comprehension.
Okay.
I knew I'd need to split it over multiple lines, so I did that from the start.
Do you have a comma on line 305? I mean 304?
Nope.
So there's the first.
So
okay.
If I put in a comma, I'll make a tuple here. I don't want that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, it makes more sense if it's like on one line, but it doesn't fit.
Okay.
So, documented rule names is now a dictionary. So rules to generate here would be snippet dot documented rule names, and I want the items, which will give me both the name and the corresponding node. So I can skip this lookup, and I use the same thing here. Now it's just an attribute lookup here, so I can remove this variable. Before it was a function call, so I didn't want to call it twice. And now it's not documented rule names, but documented rules. Right. Here as well. And now here, rule names to generate will be snippet.documented rules. Now, because it's a dictionary, when I'm just iterating over it, I can use the dictionary itself. That'll iterate over the keys. And if I want both the keys and the values, I'll call items. And where is... oh, is there one more use? Oh, here. Wants to generate... right, does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think it's time to call it a day, so I'll do a git diff. And I guess the main point of this piece was not calling this function multiple times.
Do you have my co-author line?
It should be in the chat history, right?
Yeah. Oh, we're in Jitsi now. I'll put it in.
You're actually talking through Discord still. I have you muted on Jitsi.
Oh, I am really? Oh, how funny. Oh, this is the best combination then. That's right. It's in the chat stream. I completely forgot that. We're talking through Discord.
Right, so next time we continue refactoring. I think the code is better structured now. Ideally, and I guess we didn't get to it yet, but ideally we'll get rid of these like multiple multiple arguments to the recursive functions, because I guess the same thing was in the simplifications. Oh, simplify node only takes rule item and path. Oh, it's already pretty simple. That's interesting, but it definitely should take like the full grammar. Right, so